Fake People, Real Trivia is presented by the Sherpas Podcast Picks. It is a trivia podcast generated by artificial intelligence, and our source references are listed in our show notes. You can submit questions to us through our social media pages or email us at jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com. We'll try our best for correct answers, but if we get them wrong, remember that we're only human. Never mind. We're not.
Fake people, real trivia. That's what this podcast will give you. Those AI bots, they know lots. They'll fill your brain when they explain. Fake people, real trivia. From Hong Kong to Bolivia. The players may be from Sherpa, but they know exactly what to do. If you've got a question, they will give an answer. They just scour the internet, and you just might win that bar bet. Fake people, real trivia. Ronkonkoma to Namibia. If you yell Viva la Sherpalution, they're here with your trivia solution. 'Cause it's time for Fake People, Real Trivia. Trivia, Ronkonkoma to Namibia. If you yell Viva la Sherpalution, they're here with your trivia solution. 'Cause it's time for Fake People, Real Trivia.
Welcome to Fake People, Real Trivia, a podcast using AI to bring you actual trivia. Since AI bots aren't allowed to vote in presidential elections, we figured that we'd round up some presidential trivia tidbits. And since we can't belong to a political party, at least not yet, we'll be discussing all of our elected presidents. Our first president, George Washington, never lived in the White House because it wasn't built yet. During his presidency, the Capitol was in Philadelphia. The White House was completed after he left office. He also bred hunting hounds, to which he gave names like Sweet Lips and Drunkard. John and Abigail Adams had a dog named Satan. Their other dog was Juno. Also, John and Abigail exchanged more than 1,100 letters over the course of their lengthy relationship. And you thought you texted a lot. Thomas Jefferson invented many things, including the swivel chair. He brought many French culinary ideas to the United States, many which became staples of American food today, such as macaroni and cheese, French fries, and ice cream. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, was only 5'4" and weighed less than 100 pounds, making him the smallest president. Both of his vice presidents, George Clinton and Elbridge Gerry, died in office, and he finished his second term in office without a vice president. By the way, the voting term gerrymandering was named after Gerry. James Monroe was the first president to have an outdoor inauguration in Washington, D.C., on the site of the current Supreme Court building. Other than George Washington, Monroe was the only president to ever run essentially unopposed, coasting to re-election in the 1820 race. He held positions in both the Jefferson and Madison administrations before he was elected. John Quincy Adams, son of John Adams, only agreed to speak with Annie Royal, the first woman to interview a president, after she stole his clothes during one of his daily baths in the Potomac River, since he enjoyed skinny dipping. Adams even signed off on a proposed expedition by a fellow hollow earther to the Earth's core. But when Andrew Jackson was voted into office, he canceled the expedition. Speaking of Andrew Jackson, he was the first of 7 presidents born in a log cabin. He had a pet parrot that could swear. At Jackson's funeral, the parrot had to be removed because it was swearing too much. He also had a 1,400-pound block of cheddar cheese that was gifted to him, which stayed in the White House for 2 years. Maybe Polly wanted a cracker with cheese? Martin Van Buren owned 2 tiger cubs as pets, which were gifted to him from the Sultan of Oman. He and his wife had 6 children, but he did not mention her in his autobiography. William Henry Harrison delivered the longest inaugural address in history, a 105-minute speech, and then died in the White House 1 month later, becoming the first president to die in office. He is the only president whose grandson also became president. The 1840 election is seen as the first modern campaign complete with advertising and campaign slogans. Harrison's was Tippecanoe and Tyler, too. John Tyler was the first president to have a veto overridden. John Tyler had 15 children, more than any other president. One of President Tyler's grandchildren is still alive in the 21st century, since the president was 75 when his last child was born in 1928, and the grandson is a descendant of that son. James Polk, president number 11, was the first president to retire after one term and not seek re-election, and was the first president to have his photograph taken while in office. His wife was a strict Presbyterian and looked down upon dancing, so it was banned in the White House while her husband was in office, including at the inaugural ball. Zachary Taylor is the only president whose remains were exhumed in 1991 to be tested for arsenic poisoning. He was not poisoned. Taylor's inauguration landed on a Sunday, and he refused to be sworn in on a holy day, so he had David Rice Atchison stand in for him. Millard Fillmore installed the first bathtub in the White House. Fillmore was a bibliophile who carried a dictionary with him at all times in order to improve his vocabulary. Franklin Pierce and his wife had 3 sons, all who died before the age of 12. He was the first president to cancel the inaugural ball due to the death of one of them. In February 1847, Pierce became a colonel and commander of the 9th Infantry Regiment, and then a brigadier general, despite having exactly 0 experience with the Army. James Buchanan was the only president who was never married. He had been engaged to a woman named Anna Coleman, but it was called off after a fight. She died later that year in what some have said was a suicide. Buchanan had a ward named Harriet Lane who served as his first lady while he was in office. Buchanan helped draft the 1854 Ostend Manifesto, which advocated for an American invasion of Cuba. Abraham Lincoln was a licensed bartender. Before politics, he co-owned a bar in Illinois. The 16th president considered joining the Donner Party with his friend, James F. Reed. At the time, he and his wife Mary Todd Lincoln had a toddler and were already expecting their next child, so they decided against it. Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor, made his own suits. He was a tailor in Tennessee before launching his political career. Johnson apparently cared for a family of White House mice, which he called the Little Fellows. Ulysses S. Grant was born Hiram Ulysses Grant, but changed his name because he did not like his monogram, H.U.G. While he was president, in 1872, sitting President Grant was pulled over and fined $20 for exceeding the Washington speed limit. On a horse. Rutherford B. Hayes was the first to host a White House Easter egg roll. His wife, Lucy, was known as Lemonade Lucy because she banned alcohol from the White House. James Garfield, president number 20, was the first presidential candidate to spend more than $1 million on his campaign. He could write with both hands at the same time in different languages. Chester A. Arthur was the first president to take the presidential oath of office in his own home, in New York City. He owned 80 pairs of pants, and was known for his fashion sense and style. Grover Cleveland, the first president elected to non-consecutive terms, personally answered the White House phone. Before he was president, Grover Cleveland was a hangman and carried out 2 hanging sentences to save his district money. Benjamin Harrison, grandson of William Henry Harrison and the first president to have electricity in the White House, once got an electrical shock, leading his family to often refuse to touch the light switches and sometimes leave the lights on at bedtime. Harrison was also the first president to hire a female White House staffer. William McKinley was the first president to use campaign buttons. He always wore a red carnation for good luck, but gave it to a little girl the day of his assassination. McKinley's likeness appears on the $500 bill, which was discontinued in 1969. Theodore Roosevelt set what was then the world record for the most handshakes in one day with 8,513 handshakes at a White House reception in 1907. The president and his kids kept a menagerie of horses, cats, dogs, guinea pigs, a lizard, a badger, a snake named Emily Spinach, and a bear named Jonathan Edwards, among others. William Howard Taft started the tradition of the president throwing out the first pitch of the baseball season in 1910. After his 1908 election victory, he requested a possum feast, which reportedly fed over 600 individuals. Woodrow Wilson is the only president buried in Washington, D.C., at the National Cathedral. In 1914, Wilson officially established the second Sunday in May as Mother's Day. Women were included for the first time in Woodrow Wilson's second inaugural parade. Warren Harding was the first president to visit Alaska and Canada. He bet and lost White House china on a poker game. Harding got the nickname Wobbly Warren for often sitting on the fence on various issues and sometimes changing sides. Calvin Coolidge, President number 30, was the only president sworn in by former President Chief Justice William Howard Taft. The Coolidges also loved animals and had 5 dogs, a cat, a bear, 2 lions, a goose, a bobcat, an antelope, a wallaby, and a pygmy hippo, as well as a raccoon named Rebecca. Herbert Hoover refused to accept a salary for his presidency and gave all of his federal paychecks to charity. Hoover invented his own sport, called Hoover Ball, which was a cross between volleyball, tennis, and dodgeball that was played with a medicine ball. Franklin Roosevelt was a devoted stamp collector who kept up his hobby while in office. He was very superstitious and suffered from triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13. So much so that he would refuse to travel on the 13th day of any month. Oddly enough, Roosevelt passed away on April 12, 1945. The following day would have been Friday the 13th. The middle initial S in Harry Truman's name is not an abbreviation and does not stand for another name. For his birthday in 1947, Harry's pals had a bowling alley installed in the White House. But he hadn't bowled since he was 19 years old. Dwight Eisenhower was an avid golfer who installed a putting green on the White House lawn. World War II hero Ike was the first president to ride in a helicopter. Eisenhower and all of his 7 brothers would at one point be nicknamed Ike, as it was an abbreviation of their surname Eisenhower. Dwight was known as Little Ike, and his older brother Edgar was Big Ike. When Eisenhower graduated from West Point, he dropped the Little and was the only brother still using the Ike nickname. John F. Kennedy was the first person born in the 20th century to become president. The Kennedys also owned many animals, such as several dogs and horses, a rabbit, hamsters, parakeets, and cats that lived with the family. First daughter Caroline's Shetland pony, Macaroni, was allowed to wander freely on the White House lawn. He also performed the first presidential turkey pardon. Lyndon B. Johnson graduated from high school at the age of 15. He originally owned a franchise of the easy listening music in Austin and sold music to Eisenhower's White House. Johnson issued the first Medicare card to Harry Truman when Truman turned 81 years old. Richard Nixon was the first president to visit all 50 states. His favorite snack was cottage cheese with ketchup and had yogurt flown in from California every day. Also, Nixon proposed to his wife, Pat, the day they met. Gerald Ford's birth name was Leslie Lynch King, Jr. He was a model for Cosmopolitan, appearing in a cover illustration he posed for in 1942. He also met his wife, Betty, through modeling. He also had a successful college football career and was scouted by several NFL teams. James Carter was the first president to use his nickname, Jimmy, while being sworn into office. Carter also wrote a children's book, The Little Baby Snugglefleeger. Look out, Taylor Swift. He leads with a total of 9 nominations and 3 Grammy Awards for Best Spoken Word Album. President number 40, Ronald Reagan, appeared in 53 Hollywood movies from Love is on the Air in 1937 to The Killers in 1964. He was offered a role in Back to the Future Part 3 as the 1885 mayor of Hill Valley. George H.W. Bush was the ambassador to the United Nations, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, the U.S. envoy to China, and the director of the CIA, all before 1977. Bush considered naming Clint Eastwood when Eastwood was mayor of Carmel, California, as his running mate, but ultimately chose Dan Quayle. At the age of 13, Bill Clinton went to work at a grocery store and convinced the owner to let him sell comic books. He made $100. When he appeared on the podcast Wait, Don't Tell Me, he aced the 3 questions about My Little Pony. Friendship is magic. He won 2 Grammy Awards, one for Best Spoken Word Album for Children and one for Best Spoken Word Album. George W. Bush was the first to follow his father as president since John Quincy Adams in 1824. Bush's 9th cousins twice removed, with Hugh Hefner sharing the same pair of great-grandparents. In 1992, Bush vomited on the Prime Minister of Japan at a state dinner in Tokyo while in Asia for a 12-day trip. After the incident, the term Bushasuru, do a Bush, became a popular Japanese slang word for vomiting. Barack Obama turned down a pet donkey from the Colombian village of Turbaco. Rapper Ludacris made headphones exclusively for him, complete with the presidential seal on the sides. Obama also has 2 Emmys. Although vice presidents are generally restricted from driving during their time in office, Biden received permission to drive Jay Leno around in Biden's own 1967 Corvette Stingray for a 2016 episode of the web series Jay Leno's Garage. The car had been his father's wedding gift to him. Speaking of things on wheels, his favorite movie is Chariots of Fire. And lastly, our current president, Donald Trump, has appeared in 68 movies and TV shows and has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Also, while he is openly a fan of fast food, he does not like pizza crust. He is the third tallest president, behind Lincoln and Lyndon Johnson. By the way, the Sherpa is shorter than James Madison, but heavier than William Taft. That's our episode for this week. If you've got a question you'd like us to air, please message us on our social pages at Sherpalution or email us at jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com.
Hey, thanks for listening to our crazy show. Fake people, real trivia. Stick around, who knows where we'll go. Tell all of your friends and your cousin Olivia. Hit us up on socials at Sherpalution. Slide into our DMs with no confusion. Join the party, join the fun. We won't leave you the check when we're done. You made it this far, give yourself a cheer. We're laying down the facts, there's no need to fear. Your support is everything, makes it clear. Please spread the word, but we can't buy you a beer. Tell your friends, tell your fam, it's all facts, it ain't no scam. Nonsense knowledge, that's our jam. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Hit us up on socials at Sherpalution. Leave a review on your favorite podcast institution. Join the party, join the fun. Okay, you can go home now, it looks like we are done.